Hey, what's up everyone? This is Drew Davis, and I want to welcome you to Learn How to See Better. It's the only podcast out there that'll actually improve your vision the longer you listen. I want to take a moment to thank you for joining me today, and I've got some great information lined up for you. So relax and tune in, because we're about to begin. Hey, what's going on everyone? This is Drew Davis, and I want to welcome you back to Learn How to See Better. It's the only podcast out there that'll help improve your vision the longer you listen. So tune into this one. What we have is a special episode that I like to bring to all of you. And I get a chuckle out of this one because as I've learned how to see better, I thought it was really about just absorbing clear, concrete facts that were very visible, very, very straightforward, hard to argue with, right? I'm a guy with a scientific, educational background, right? And so my viewpoint on things is, give me the facts and I can decipher it all. And it all makes a lot of sense and it's clean and clear cut. But what I found through actually living and going through life is that there's more to it than meets the eye. And why do I say that? Well, I say that because we now live in the information age, right? And just about anything out there in the world you can look up and learn more about. There is a myriad of facts about such a topic, and you can just really dig deep if you want to. And so one thing that's interesting that you'll find is that if you are to, look up certain things about health, you might get some differing views. You could look up certain things about food and you might get differing views. You might read a certain nutrition label and get a certain view about what the appropriate way or recommended way of eating is, right? And so I say all that to say this. I found a lot of information out there that seems to contradict itself a little bit, and sometimes they're just flat out opposites. I myself have elected to make some pretty unique food choices over the last couple of years that are interesting to most. And typically what I will reply with is a simple phrase of, before you veto keto. And then I'll try to share some valuable topic or lesson or story that I've learned, right? So yes, the name of the topic of this episode is Before You Veto Keto. This isn't necessarily designed to change anyone's religion, because I realize food can be a very highly debated topic and seem like if you're trying to open someone's eyes to fueling their body different, it's the magnitude of discussion like you're trying to change the religion, and people can get very offensive and they can get very defensive. And I would just encourage people to receive information on a topic that you may not be an expert about with at least an open mind, so you can better understand the information you're receiving. So before you veto keto, listen to the argument. See if it resonates with you. If it doesn't resonate with you as to how it could be beneficial, why not? Is it that it's so different from what you've heard or what you've grown up on or what you've known your whole life? Or does it just sound too good to be true? Sometimes these questions are a challenge to our belief system, I believe, and it does set the stage for an inability to receive information. Because what do we find when we hear something that we've already heard before? We're quick to tell somebody, hey, I already know that, right? Look at how smart I am. I already know that, right? And of course, when we already know that, how receptive are we to hear anything else about that topic? We're not very receptive, right? So if someone told you or were to share information with you to see or have the opportunity to see things from a different light, from a different perspective with regards to fueling their body, it might get turned down or rejected pretty quick, which is unfortunate because, well, if we're going to cite data, I think there's quite a bit of data that cites the place I live, known as America, is a very wealthy nation. What comes with that wealth and abundance is, to be frank, a lot of overindulgence, right? And so it's translated into a large and growing number of health issues amongst our population today. And it's crazy to think that, in this day and age where there's so many advancements in technology, advancements in modern medicine, that, we can't just brush all these challenges under the rug, right? And I say that a little bit tongue in cheek, but the fact of the matter is, never before have we had access to more information to give us better insight, for the right answers for, good and optimal health. But what we see in our reality are more and more instances where, people are 60 and 65 years old and in their 50s, attached to machines for like the purposes of practically life support, right? Or taking a handful of pills every day that if they don't take them, they're not going to make it. I mean, it's unfortunate. And so am I over here with my lab coat and stethoscope on saying that I've got all the answers? No, no, no. I'm just sharing my viewpoints and just sharing some of the experiences that I've had. Because I would say that people should consider relearning or potentially unlearning the data that they've received thus far about nutrition. Because granted, there were studies once upon a time that said one thing. There's different studies now that rebuke and defy the declarations made in those other studies. And then there's other studies that give you half of one story, half of the other. And so you don't really know what to go on if you just study a study, right? But what you can study is the results of sticking with a program, trying a program, being your own science experiment, and being willing to experiment with things a little bit so that you don't necessarily have to resort to saying, well, I got no other choice. I'm being diagnosed with this health condition, so I'm just a victim. I'm all about learning how to see better. I'm all about people becoming empowered to live the best life that they possibly can. And as amazing creatures as we are, it only goes to show that we're capable of achieving amazing things, amazing accomplishments, but we have to be given the right opportunity to do so. And in this day and age, when so many people are struggling with health-related issues in their life, it just makes you feel like, gosh, I wish there was a better way to kind of shake people and wake people up, that the spiraling out of control that's happening with so many of these health issues goes right back to some of the things that we're consuming from a food standpoint. And regardless of what dietary favoritism someone might possess, I think we can all agree to the basic facts that, garbage in, garbage out. And we just have to understand that, not everything that tastes good in our mouth is good for our bodies, because we're seeing, for the first time ever, a generation that's literally digging a grave with its teeth. And that's a scary, scary thought when you think about how we really all just teach what we know. And if we as a people are developing very unhealthy eating habits that are bringing about, now childhood illnesses that are starting to plague teenagers, it's easy for someone with eyes halfway open to recognize that there's a problem. There's got to be a better approach to looking at that's going to be more sustainable for the long run. And so I share some of my experiences about the path and the choices that I've made here freely, because they're just a part of my experience. They're just a part of what I've gone through. And, after this kind of long-winded explanation about the idea of being open to listening to something different, hence the phrase, before you veto keto, it's probably only fair for me to maybe share a little bit about my personal backstory with this journey and the role it plays in the viewpoints that I have today that I'd like to share. So I remember being a real active kid growing up. I got the opportunity to play outside until the street lights came on. Back in the day, and I was skinny, and I got to eat whatever and not gain weight. And had the good genes, and I played sports, and in high school I played football and wrestled, and even after that in college I worked in the gym, and felt like I knew nutrition, right? And the funny thing is, you want to live a healthy life, right? I always wanted to be healthy and fit and strong. And, especially given that I was on the leaner side, like kind of skinny, I wanted to get buff. I wanted to get big. I wanted to be strong. And I always wanted to be in shape. And I felt that was the best representation of me. And I remember even thinking it at certain points in my, I guess childhood or adolescence, where it was like, all right, I didn't want to get fat or let myself go, right? And that was just because of, part of the way you'd see the way society responded was pretty crude and cruel. And it seemed logical to me, that the athletic people that were always active, or just that the two went hand in hand, right? If you're always active, then you're just not going to be, obese or overweight, and there'd be no reason for me to, look up one day and be, 50, 60 pounds overweight, because, I felt if I was athletic, I would be immune to that. And that was just one of the things that I remember as you kind of look at decisions that you make about things you are and aren't going to do, right? No different than some people make a decision that they're, not going to consume alcohol as an example, right? They see signs of that behavior show up in the world, or signs of what the consequences could be from overindulgence showing up in the world. They say, hey, I don't want that for me. No thanks. And so I remember promising myself, like, I don't think I'm not ever gonna get obese or overweight. I view myself as an athletic person, so I'm kind of gonna be fit for life, right? And the interesting thing was, you go out about your business and you're off into the world, and you start, you go through school, finish college, you get a job, you're working, and I'd had some success in corporate America, and flying around, and next thing you know, you've had some promotions, and you get to your mid-30s. It's like I all of a sudden had a kind of sedentary lifestyle. You start a family, right? And just because you might not be sitting behind a desk 9 to 5, I mean, when you're out on the road traveling, like, you're still sitting down a lot. You might be walking, to the airport to get, to go sit on a plane for a few hours. And then you go sit in a rental car for another couple hours. Then you go sit in meetings. So just because you're busy and on the go doesn't mean that you're not necessarily leading a lifestyle that's just not very active. And, I was very busy in the traveling sales. So, you're whining and dining customers, entertaining them, you're shifting time zones, your sleep gets crushed, right? I mean, workouts, forget about it. And, high activity, high stakes, high stress, high income jobs, you find that can take a toll on the body because of the way that you're kind of burning the candle at both ends. And I remember just not, wanting to, let it all kind of fall apart, because you can see that there are certain sacrifices that you have to make with regards to how you're going to spend your time, right? And when you're trying to climb the corporate ladder, and be a good dad, it's like you're trying to, manage all of this and keep your sanity in it all. And I remember starting to pick up weight and develop a little bit of a dad bod. And second kid comes around, and he wasn't sleeping quite as soundly as kiddo number one. And all of a sudden you look up, and you've got this trifecta, and life's not bad, but then you're at a point where you're not feeling good, physically and mentally, like you've known that you typically have in the past. And, next thing you knew, it was like for me and my body type, I was surprised to be, almost weighing, close to almost 200 pounds. And it's like, to make matters worse, it wasn't particularly easy for my wife by my side, who also saw, as life changes and, having more kids and that same lifestyle, and we weren't living with any kind of definiteness about our physical activity or our diet. And she experiences some of the brain fog and when you try and get motivated and you start a workout program and just don't feel like you are having the effectiveness of it, right? I think what that started to do was, you develop this attitude that, oh, I'm just getting older. This stuff doesn't, this stuff doesn't take effect like it used to. And you find and feel like you're stuck, you're fed up, and you're at your wit's end on what you're going to do about your situation, right? Like as far as just feeling like you're in control of it all and not feeling, completely overwhelmed. And I remember one thing that was particularly unnerving was the scenario where, found out my grandma was going to have to get put on dialysis. I really didn't know exactly what that was. I knew it was a medical type of procedure, right? I thought. And at the time, I was kind of asking the question like, all right, whatever that is, when do you get off that? And, or how long do you have to do that? I think was that the question, because it was like these doctor's appointments, like how long does she have to go to those? And it's like, oh, well, she doesn't. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like you go to the doctor to get fixed, to get better. Something's broken, something's not right. Like make it better. That doesn't make sense to me. What do you mean there's there's a diagnosis that has no end? Like I don't follow. So let's take a step back, right? Like why are we even going, why do you have, what's the purpose that someone has to go? Basic questions born out of ignorance, right? Why does somebody have to go on dialysis? What is it? Oh, okay, it's when you have, diabetes and your organs start failing. Oh, okay, gotcha, all right, and what exactly is diabetes and what causes it? And, around this same time, my wife was reading this very insightful book called The Grain Brain by Dr. David Perlmutter. And it was crazy that like I had this epiphany where all the stars aligned and I saw that like experience and evidence in the real world, plus, information that you find that you come across in your journey as you're trying to figure out your own answers to questions and challenges you're facing. It just hit like a ton of bricks all at once. Like, oh my goodness, like all this is related. Like we have all of a sudden found ourselves in a scenario where many of us individually and as a society as a whole, where it's like we're digging our own graves with our teeth. Try that on for size and magnitude and just, consideration for a moment. And it's becoming more and more prevalent. And this was all, new information for me. I'm sitting here thinking, my goodness, what a amazing kind of discovery and so much, base information that supports it. It's dumbfounding, and it's right there hiding in front of our face, and I was born in the South, so I'm used to the Southern cooking, the fried foods, the dessert, the sweet tea, the candy and the junk food. And it's like I was raised on this stuff, so I learned how to cook this way. So it's cooked in and seasoned into my habits, and I've loved it for so long. And to see that, it's like, wow, it's not even, it ain't the fat, it's the sugar. Taking everybody out and running folks through the gamut left and right, and you finding out all this information at the same time, and like, oh, okay, well, you get hit with diabetes, and then it's going to double your chances of getting Alzheimer's and quadruple your odds of getting dementia. And it was like, oh my gosh, how could it really be? Me, this athletic kid, thinking all I got to do is stay fit all my life and I can eat whatever I want, whenever I want, and still was pretty much, living by that, with the exception that I wasn't active anymore. And then realizing that, like, wow, it's the food choices more so then the exercise, it's really setting the stage, the big stage, for how our overall quality of life is determined. And that's not just from a health standpoint. That's like your overall health, and then like even your happiness. Seeing that foods affect moods. It's like, wow, okay. And to think that we don't necessarily give credit to the fact that it's like the single most critical health factor, the single most critical factor in our overall health throughout our entire lives. And many instances we choose it based on convenience, we choose it based on pleasure, and it's like it's carelessly, unknowingly. I mean, you're gonna eat more than you work out. You're gonna eat multiple times a day. There's not typically a whole lot of real food education out there. You might learn a couple of super simple basic things when you're a kid, but if you lived in bad habits, you're taught bad habits, and if you're taught the bad info, it's like, we might in some instances be going after the wrong thing as far as dietary changes. And, I was inspired by having this wake-up call. I said, okay, here's what we got to do. Immediately got it, full audit, getting rid of all the junk out of the house. Immediately, committing to making changes, big changes, drastic changes, to become more educated about, what we were consuming and to actually make better choices. And wanted to go out and tell the world, like, hey, I've had a wake-up call, and I feel like I'm Neo in the Matrix, seeing what's really happening here, and everybody better stay woke and make sure that we're not just being so naive as we go through lives, just shoveling food in our faces all the time, and really getting serious about my food and nutrition education. And it was the dangest thing was you try and share like life-saving information, and nobody's trying to hear you. You would think that, I don't know, you would think that people would just be more open to receiving information that's like, hey, I found this out, this is amazing, this is completely eye-opening and a massive shift. And somebody would reply occasionally with this, oh, that's just the old Dr. Atkins South Beach, and those are bad, and those things called heart attacks, and you have to have your carbs, and these are just another fad diet that won't last. And I said, wow, what resistance to what I was essentially learning about, the power of ketosis, the power of the ketogenic diet and ketogenic lifestyle, and how this is literally a lifesaver. And it was unsettling. And all of a sudden, you go out in social situations, good luck, trying to just head out real quick for a bite to eat. It's like, you're some sort of oddball or freak if you don't want if you don't want dessert with your supper, or you don't want a double helping of the mac and cheese. And so it was just pretty surprising to try and be more inspirational around loved ones. And just the questions and the vicious interrogations, and why are you doing that? You're gonna hurt yourself. And I remember even seeing it was like a online post that someone had made, and it said nobody gave a hoot when they were just eating fast food every day, but the minute you try and cut some carbs, and they think your heart's gonna fail out of you in a day. And it was just that was probably one of the most difficult things, is seeing that eating out was like a landmine. The sugars that are hidden in the sauces, the dressings, these carb heavy dominant large portions. And yeah, it's some tricky stuff out there. And so it was disheartening, right? And a lot of people would like sugar defenders of the universe. and you realize that making certain subtle changes, it's almost like food was a religion. And that was a surprising thing. And you could offend somebody by talking about food and just things that you'd learn. But now everybody was an expert. Now everyone knew and had all the answers. And it was not really anything that was anything novel, more just of the same regurgitated, tried and truly not working type of advice that I'd be hearing. And so, I recognized that I was going to be on a longer journey by myself, from the standpoint of ourselves. My wife was with me during this entire thing, and there's that part where you definitely felt alone. But being able to go and understand and see that, hey, there's some pitfalls out there. If you know that you get weak in the knees every time you pass the frozen yogurt shop, drive a different way home. But I mean, yeah, I'd get run through the ringer. People tell me I'm losing too much weight, and it's like, well, look at the health that I've gained, not the weight that I've lost. You're coming up in your late 30s and you got, blood work looks like you're in your late 20s. That's something more significant than most people want to give credit to, and not having to be, taking any early pills or medications about ailments and diseases of the body. And it's crazy to think that just like that, 2 years have passed, and been living the keto lifestyle and loving it, and have released over 25 pounds of unnecessary weight, and feel great. Look good, eat good, exercise. I've gone from a night owl to a early bird, and enjoy a pretty pain-free life. It's one of those things that I just didn't give the credit and the credence to really believe in once upon a time, that the choices of what we put on our plate would have such an impact, not just on our health from a physical standpoint, but from a mental standpoint, mental clarity, and how your brain is able to function in an optimized state, and to be able to enjoy the increased energy, increased strength, and just being a positive influence on the people around us that love us and care for us, and maybe some of the ones that even heckled us, but they can see this isn't a overnight thing. We've come to understand and truly see that. And this process, I kid you not, has transformed my views on health like we wouldn't believe. Health overall, nutrition, physical activity, brain fog, inflammation, stress-related illnesses, including cancer. Some of the sacred cows that come along with everything in the Western medicine world, and more than that. But by being able to understand and develop an understanding that food is actually the medicine of our world, and that medicine is also food. People were, there's once upon a time where there's still quite a few healthy people out there, and we didn't have, all these different modern medicines that we do today, and they can be used to aid, but in some instances, when you got people taking, pills by the fistfuls daily with all sorts of side effects and interactions, that's just not healthy, because you go and talk to these people and they're not feeling good. They're not enjoying the experience, and to just learn to understand you can keep it simple and basic and close to nature, and be able to eat in a way that's delicious and nutritious. That's like having your cake and eat it too. No pun intended at all. But yeah, I've learned to be open about the lifestyle and food choices that I have, but I don't push it on to other people. And I've learned how to see better regarding, everything food related. Because you see that, okay, if sugar's a religion and you don't want to offend somebody, be careful about what you say around certain folks. And it's okay for you to do you, and okay for me to do me. But most importantly, I think the change that I had from the decision to start to inspect what I expected out of my life with regard to my fueling is translated really into that lifelong commitment to overall health and well-being, and just understanding that I'm in full control of my experience. We're in full control of our experience, and you don't have to be encumbered by the excess and the overindulgence, because each day we get the opportunity to make a decision And that's to live unhealthy or to live healthy. You can choose Coca-Cola or you could choose cauliflower. You could choose bubble gum or you could choose, Brussels sprouts. And, I found comfort feeling that I found a path that is works for us and is right for us nutritionally, and possess the power to adjust as needed and if needed. It's kind of like, you're not a tree. If you want to tear up your life script and write down a new one, go ahead at any moment. We can change our destination or change our direction overnight. And that's the beautiful thing about the experience that you go through. You find yourself maybe drifting through life or wandering through your existence, and you stumble across either information, maybe a certain person that can become the ticket to your transformation, and you don't want to limit the opportunity to experience that. So that's one of the things I'd say has been big for me in my overall experience. And for all of you out there, I would say, take a moment to decide what things matter most to you regarding your health, and what are you willing to give up to go up? Because you know what, the fact of the matter is we're all different. Everybody's got different needs, different goals, different objectives, but it's, just go learn something and do something that's going to help you improve your experience. Don't be afraid to get that second opinion, and to make sure that you feel that you're comfortable with the advice that you get. Be educated. Don't just regurgitate info that you hear or see from others, or from just media that's fed to you. And because as the saying goes, average advice is for average people. And I would even say that applies to some of the general nutrition advice that's out there, and making sure that the advice you're getting is coming from folks qualified to provide it. And it's not necessarily about the credentials and certifications, because in the real world it's like your results are your certification, truth told. So be willing to ask some of those questions. It's like, if every solution to your ailment requires a pill that you get on but you can't ever get off of, think about that. Are your best interests really in the mix in that type of scenario? Is that even really considered a solution? Or is it just a fix or workaround, right? Again, what are you willing to give up to go up? It's your life to live, and you create your experience. And that's from the age of 3 to 83. And even beyond that, if you eat right. So with all that to say, before you veto keto, challenge yourself. Do something different. If you're not happy with your current health, do something about it. Change it. Go learn a few things. Educate yourself, evaluate your options, and go execute. And just at least learn the landscape and experiment a little bit. And I don't think I've heard too many instances where somebody went and added some leafy greens to their diet and fell out pretty quickly afterwards. If anything, quite the opposite is known to happen. And I think the side effects from experimenting with a couple different foods are going to be a lot less dangerous than some of the side effects that you're going to get from experimenting with, this new pill or that new pill, if this one causes a reaction, because at the end of the day, it's all about trying to find your happy place, and to get to a point where, you are enjoying life, and not just the consumption part of it, but the part after that. So, take control, take charge of your life, and seek help if you need it. Don't be afraid to pray over it. The idea is to just live with definiteness. And that's kind of what I want to leave everyone with, as I'm hoping that, just by me sharing a little bit about my experience and what I've seen over these last couple years, and how it's forever shaped my outlook on the world in this arena, looking forward. So with that, I appreciate your focus and attention on a very serious subject matter. And if this could maybe help somebody or inspire them, don't be hesitant to share it the same way that I shared it with you. and I hope that you find it valuable, because I found it valuable being able to share and express my excitement about what I went through, what I learned, and how I'm now able to see better in this arena. So thank you again. Appreciate that. See ya.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.